Hello and welcome back to Quick History. Today we're tackling a group so secretive, so deadly, that their very name became the word we use for a political killer. We're talking, of course, about the legendary Order of Assassins.
Now, to really get a grip on just how fearsome these guys were, we're not going to start at the beginning. No, we're going to start with a single moment, a hit so audacious it literally shocked the entire medieval world. All right, picture this. It's the year 1192. We're in the city of Tyre. Now, this isn't just any city. It's a massive crusader stronghold right in the heart of the Holy Land. Think of it as this bustling, heavily fortified hub just packed with knights, spies, merchants, a real powder keg of political intrigue. And at the center of it all is our man, Conrad of Montferrat. This guy is at the absolute top of his game. I mean, he's just been elected the King of Jerusalem. He's walking home after dinner, probably feeling pretty good about himself, taking a familiar route down a narrow street. And this right here, this is their signature move. It's all about deep, patient infiltration. As Conrad walks, he sees two men up ahead. He recognizes them, or at least he thinks he does. He sees them as Christian monks, part of his own household, trusted faces. So of course, he lets his guard down. Why wouldn't he?
But they weren't monks. In the blink of an eye, the illusion just shatters. Daggers are out, and Conrad is stabbed again and again. The newly crowned King of Jerusalem is left dying in the street in full view of everyone. And the killers? They don't even try to run. This was just unbelievably brazen. It was public, it was precise, and it was terrifying. You can just imagine the question racing from the Holy Land all the way back to the royal courts of Europe. Who on earth are these people? Who are the assassins?
Well, to answer that, we've got to rewind. We're going to go back about 100 years and travel way east, deep into the rugged mountains of Persia. Because you see, the assassins, they weren't just some murder-for-hire guild. They were a whole community, a religious group fighting for their very survival. They were known as the Nizari Ismailis, a particular branch of Shia Islam. And back in the 11th century, they were in a really tough spot. They were a tiny minority, totally surrounded and persecuted by the massive Sunni Seljuk Empire, which saw them as heretics that needed to be, well, wiped off the map.
But they had an ace up their sleeve, a brilliant, almost visionary leader named Hassan-i Sabbah. He knew a straight-up fight was suicide. So, in 1090, he did something clever. Through smarts and infiltration, not brute force, he took control of the fortress of Alamut. This place was a literal fortress in the sky, an eagle's nest, and it became the heart of their new state.
So you've got this classic David and Goliath situation, right? On one side, the Seljuk Empire, with these massive armies, hundreds of thousands of soldiers. On the other, you have this small community hunkered down in a mountain. They couldn't win a normal war, so Hassan-i Sabbah basically invented a whole new rule book. We'd call it asymmetric warfare today.
He realized, okay, I can't destroy their army, but I can cut the head off the snake. And this led to a whole new way of fighting, one based not on swords and shields, but on something much more powerful, fear. And their missions, wow, they were absolute masterclasses in patience. First, they'd gather intelligence, sometimes for years, getting people on the inside. Then, they'd find a weakness, a routine, a belief, anything they could exploit. They'd use disguises to get impossibly close, just like they did with Conrad. And when the time was perfect, they'd strike. And almost always with a dagger. It was personal, it was terrifying, and it left no doubt. And they proved this theory worked with their very first major target. They went right for the top, Nizam al-Mulk. This was the Grand Vizier, the second most powerful man in the entire Seljuk Empire, and the same guy who was publicly calling for their total annihilation. One of their agents, disguised as a holy man, just walked right up to him with a piece of paper and bam. It was over.
The psychological impact was immediate. I mean, just listen to this line from a poem written at the time. A king with 100,000 soldiers would live in fear of one lone warrior on foot. Think about that. What good is your giant army when a single devoted agent can just walk through it all and kill you? It was pure psychological warfare.
But here's something that's really important to understand. This wasn't just random violence. They had a code. Their strikes were surgical, like a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. They went to great lengths to avoid collateral damage, no killing of innocents. The hits were public because they were sending a message, and the agents, they knew they probably weren't coming back.
This was never about conquest. It was about one thing: survival. So, you have this secretive, highly effective group that terrifies the world's most powerful rulers. Naturally, when people don't have facts, they fill in the blanks with stories. And oh boy, did they come up with some wild ones.
Okay, the biggest, most famous legend of all comes to us from Marco Polo. He spun this tale about the old man of the mountain who would find young followers, get them high on hashish, and then lead them to this secret hidden garden, a literal paradise on earth. Then he'd tell them, "You see this? Only I can get you back here. Just do exactly as I say."
And that story, that hashish part, is where we get the word assassin, from the Arabic term hashishin. But here's the crazy part. Most modern historians are pretty sure this was just an insult, a piece of enemy propaganda. It didn't mean hashish user. It was more like calling someone rabble or scum. It was a smear campaign.
I mean, let's just look at the facts. There is zero evidence for this whole hashish story. The Ismailis themselves wrote a ton of stuff, and they never once mention it. Archaeologists have dug all around Alamut, no secret paradise gardens. And let's be real, does a mission that requires years of training, perfect language skills, and nerves of steel sound like a job for someone who's high? No way. It was just really, really effective propaganda.
So, for almost 200 years, this little mountain state survived against all odds. It's an incredible story. But eventually, a new power rose in the east, an enemy that their daggers and their tactics simply couldn't stop.
That enemy was the Mongol Empire. In 1256, the armies of Hulagu Khan just rolled through Persia like a tidal wave. They laid siege to Alamut, the Eagle's Nest, and after nearly 170 years of being untouchable, it finally fell. Soon after, the Mamluks in Syria took their last strongholds, and just like that, the Nizarati state was gone.
But, and this is a really big but, it wasn't the end of the people. Their state was gone, their castles were rubble, but the Nizari Ismaili community itself, they survived. They outlasted the Mongols, they outlasted the Mamluks, and in fact, they're still a vibrant community all around the world today. So when you think about it, Hassan-i Sabbah's original goal, survival, was actually a huge success.
And what about their other legacy? Well, it's a word you and I use all the time. Their name, Hashishin, got twisted by all those myths and legends, and it entered our language as something totally different. It became the ultimate word for a stealthy, political killer, an assassin.
So, in the end, the real story of the assassins is this incredible mix of hard facts, wild propaganda, and pure legend. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question, doesn't it? How is it that a small community from a remote mountain fortress nearly 1,000 years ago can still capture our imagination so completely today?